When two former UFC champions decide to run it back after years of ups and downs, the entire MMA world stops to take notice. Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman isn't just another rematch, it's an echo of a moment in time when both men sat at the pinnacle of the sport, only to see their fortunes spin out of control. Their first encounter in 2015 was memorable for its intensity, unexpected outcome, and the surprising path each fighter's career took afterward. Now, the stage is set for a potential second chapter. Both men appear hungry to reclaim a sense of dignity and re-establish themselves among the elites. But with so much personal history, the stakes extend well beyond a simple win or loss. Will this match be the last big stand for one or both of these warriors? Or could it be the start of a brand new era of revenge, redemption, and raw ambition? Rather than diving straight into the new fight details, let's roll back the clock for a moment and remember why Rockhold versus Weidman was so special in the first place. Their rivalry didn't appear out of nowhere. It was forged by the high-wire tension of a world title bout, and it has only gotten more compelling in the years since. Strap yourselves in, because if the MMA rumor mill is any indicator, this second match may well be a career-defining crossroads for everyone involved. Back in 2015, Chris Weidman was untouchable in the eyes of many fans. He'd ended the legendary reign of Anderson Silva, established himself as a fearsome middleweight champion, and carried an undefeated record that made him the division's shining star. Meanwhile, Luke Rockhold was a quietly confident athlete with tremendous skills, someone who believed he had all the tools to dethrone Weidman if given the chance. When they finally stepped into the octagon, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Weidman looked every bit the champion, but Rockhold refused to back down. He pressed the action, countered effectively, and capitalized on key moments. By the time the fourth round rolled around, he had managed to shatter Weidman's aura of invincibility, earning a TKO victory and wrestling the belt away in dramatic fashion. In one night, Rockhold not only broke Weidman's undefeated streak, he also set off a chain reaction that sent both men on winding paths full of triumphs and pitfalls. Fans walked away stunned, eager to see how these two middleweights would redefine the division. At the time, a rematch felt almost inevitable. Yet, as so often happens in MMA, circumstances intervened, and the direction of both fighters' careers took more complicated turns. Chris Weidman's decline came as a surprise to many. After losing his title to Rockhold, he stepped into the cage 10 more times, securing only 3 wins. Injuries piled up, and each new fight brought with it a fresh wave of speculation. Would Weidman return to form? Could he recapture the ironclad will that once guided him to dethrone an icon like Anderson Silva? While he did achieve a few impressive victories along the way, consistency became a relentless adversary. On the other side, Luke Rockhold's fortunes were similarly turbulent. Despite holding Weidman's title at one point, he would go on to lose 4 out of his next 5 UFC appearances. Even outside the UFC, things didn't always go well. He suffered a TKO loss in a bare-knuckle boxing match to Mike Perry, an event that left Rockhold with literal battle scars. He lost teeth, an image that fueled countless social media debates about fighters pushing their limits. Yet Rockhold proved he wasn't ready to step away. He tried his hand at karate combat, pulling off a notable third-round knockout over Joe Schilling, showcasing flashes of the athleticism and skill that once crowned him as a champion. Even if his rise to the top is behind him, Rockhold clearly isn't prepared to fade quietly, and that sets the stage for this upcoming rematch against Weidman, a contest loaded with question marks about who still has the sharper edge, the stronger will, and the deeper determination. While Rockhold and Weidman are preparing to run it back, the MMA universe is hardly calm. Fighters are speaking out, coaches are clashing publicly, and controversies burst into the spotlight at the speed of a viral tweet. Sean Strickland, for example, has become a lightning rod for drama, both for his polarizing comments and for the recent turbulence in his professional corner. Dean Thomas, Gilbert Burns, and Renato Moicano have been openly critiquing each other's takes on what makes a fighter that guy who's willing to push everything to the limit in the cage. Dean called out Strickland's willingness to fight to the death as more talk than reality, suggesting that some fighters simply don't have that extra gear. Gilbert Burns and Moicano found his words disrespectful, especially coming from a former fighter who should know how unpredictable any match can become. Although these heated discussions don't directly involve Rockhold or Weidman, they create a restless atmosphere in MMA, a world where respect can be fleeting and reputations shift with a single comment or one bad performance. Amid this swirl of debate, the question becomes, how will Weidman and Rockhold handle the noise? Will the friction among other fighters, coaches, and commentators rattle their confidence or only fuel it further? The turmoil swirling around Sean Strickland's recent setbacks has thrown a spotlight on the importance of loyalty and communication between fighters and their coaches. After Strickland lost to Dricus du Plessis, Strickland's own coach, Eric Nicksick, aired his frustrations publicly. He claimed that Strickland's performance lacked inspiration and questioned whether Sean's dedication to the sport might be wavering. Strickland fired back with a lengthy video calling Nicksick an influencer for venting publicly instead of handling things behind closed doors. Even so, Strickland insisted they remain friends, just not corner partners. The drama highlighted how easily relationships can break down in the high-stress environment of professional fighting. Coaches and fighters rely on mutual trust, especially in training camps where every shortcoming is scrutinized. When that trust is weakened, a fighter's entire game plan can unravel. This atmosphere raises the stakes for Rockhold and Weidman. Both have changed up their training routines over the years, seeking new coaching expertise or fresh perspectives to regain lost momentum. Will the teams behind each fighter provide the necessary support, or will media pressure spark cracks in the foundation? In the hyper-competitive world of MMA, the right support system can be the difference between a legendary comeback and a catastrophic defeat. Beyond Rockhold and Weidman's impending showdown, several other potential dream matchups are capturing fans' imaginations. One rumor swirling through the MMA grapevine involves featherweight contender Ilia Topuria, who hinted that he might move up to lightweight to challenge the reigning champion Islam Makhachev. Islam himself teased a special offer from the UFC, fueling speculation that we could see another champ-champ attempt if Topuria decides to climb up. In parallel, Kamaru Usman has shared his opinions about which middleweights stand a real chance against new champion Dricus du Plessis. Usman specifically pointed to fighters like Nasruddin Imavov, suggesting that the stand-up skills of certain contenders might threaten Dricus's reign. Discussions like these remind us that an underdog can appear at any moment to challenge the status quo, just as Rockhold shocked Weidman in 2015. For Chris Weidman, that memory cuts both ways. He once dethroned an unstoppable champion in Anderson Silva, only to become the dethroned champion himself not long afterward. This sense of ever-present unpredictability is part of what makes MMA so captivating. Fans can't help but wonder whether Rockhold versus Weidman 2 might be overshadowed by a sudden breakout star or overshadowed by a wild storyline like Topuria stepping up in weight. But for now, the rematch demands its share of the limelight simply because of the history these two former champions carry. While Weidman and Rockhold prepare to revisit their old rivalry, another pair of former teammates turned enemies remains at odds: Colby Covington and Dustin Poirier. Their personal feud goes back years, tied to old gym affiliations and mutual accusations of disrespect. Dustin has repeatedly stated that if he ever crosses paths with Colby, it won't be in the controlled environment of a sanctioned MMA bout. He's claimed it would turn into a brawl that ends in legal trouble rather than a proper sporting event. Colby, of course, doesn't see it that way. He continues to call out Dustin at every opportunity, even offering to be the one to retire him if Poirier truly plans on hanging up the gloves soon. The bitterness between the two is so intense that Dustin refuses to let Colby profit from fighting him, insisting the matchup will never happen inside the octagon. The Covington-Poirier grudge stands as a harsh example of how personal animosities can outgrow the usual boundaries of professional sport. Interestingly, this kind of rivalry parallels the tension that once existed between Weidman and Rockhold, albeit in a different form. While Rockhold and Weidman may not harbor personal hatred on the same scale, the intensity of their first clash and the subsequent struggle to remain relevant have created emotional stakes. Sometimes, the hunger for respect, or simply to prove you can still dominate, drives fighters more than any personal vendetta ever could. As the official rematch between Rockhold and Weidman draws nearer, one can't help but feel the weight of each fighter's pride resting on the outcome. Both men have tasted the glory of wearing UFC gold, and both have endured humiliating defeats that put their championship legacies under scrutiny. Now, with Father Time peering over their shoulders, the margin for error is slim. A single mistake in this upcoming fight could signal the end of a storied career, or at least exile from the top tier of the division. What truly makes this matchup intriguing is the unknown factor. Neither man is exactly where he was in 2015. Weidman's string of losses and injuries have forced him to reconsider consider his approach, leaning on new training methods and a renewed focus on fundamentals. Rockhold, who once looked nearly invincible, has explored unorthodox fight environments like bare knuckle and karate combat to reignite his competitive fire. Their roads back to each other were winding and punishing, but here they are, once again face to face. MMA is a sport often shaped by hype, but with these two, it's more than hype. It's history. Both have been the hunted and the hunter. Their personalities, while different, share the common thread of believing in their own abilities when many fans or critics have doubted them. This second showdown is about which man can adapt and overcome the mental toll of the last few years. Is Rockhold's diverse fighting experience enough to confuse and batter Weidman? Or will Weidman's never-say-die attitude and improved defensive focus reignite his unstoppable side? So, where does all of this leave us? We have two former champions with battered pride, matching up in a fight that could permanently define their legacies. In a sense, this rematch stands as a microcosm of the entire MMA world. Fighters like Sean Strickland, Colby Covington, and Dustin Poirier each have their own dramas unfolding, and these events remind us that in MMA, anything can happen at any moment, both inside and outside the cage. While major clashes loom on the horizon, like Topuria's potential leap to challenge Islam Makhachev, or Kamaru Usman's predictions that certain overlooked contenders could topple the reigning champs. Rockhold versus Weidman. 2 provides a different flavor of intrigue. Instead of a classic young lion versus old guard storyline, it's a battle of 2 veterans who refuse to let their stories end. Both want to prove they still belong in the spotlight, and both have reason to believe they can recapture the greatness they once held. This isn't just about a belt, it's about validation. Sometimes that is the strongest motivator of all. They're not simply risking a title shot, these men are gambling on their identities as fighters. One will step out of the cage with renewed hope, while the other may have to confront the reality that the championship days are truly behind him. Perhaps the biggest question left unanswered is, who do you think has the edge now? Will Weidman's desire to reclaim the triumphs he once enjoyed push him to find that missing spark? Or will Rockhold's taste for unconventional challenges sharpen him enough to replicate his initial success? Only time will tell, and that's what makes this rematch electric. So, as these 2 warriors prepare for a final showdown, the MMA world collectively holds its breath. The struggles, the criticisms, the broken friendships, the new alliances, and the endless speculation all come together in moments like this, where careers can be reborn or laid to rest in a single night. Which side of history do you see them landing on? Let the countdown begin, and don't blink when they finally meet again. The next chapter in this unfinished rivalry could be the one that defines them both forever.